Few stories from the ancient world are as famous as the Trojan War. It has everything: romance, betrayal, divine intervention, and one of the most iconic tricks in military history, the Trojan Horse. For centuries, people asked, was it all just a myth, or was there a real war that inspired the legend? Today, we'll separate history from myth to uncover the truth behind the fall of Troy. The mythical story. The war's origin begins not on Earth, but in the heavens. According to Greek myth, it all started with a wedding. Eris, the goddess of discord, wasn't invited. To cause chaos, she threw a golden apple into the feast, inscribed with the words, "For the fairest." 3 goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, claimed the prize. To settle the dispute, Zeus appointed Paris, a Trojan prince, as judge. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised political power, Athena promised wisdom and victory in war, and Aphrodite promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite, and with that decision, sealed Troy's fate. That woman was Helen, already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. When Paris carried Helen off to Troy, whether by seduction or abduction, the Greeks saw it as an insult that demanded vengeance. Under the command of Agamemnon, brother of Menelaus, the Greek kings united their forces and set sail for Troy. The war lasted 10 years. Heroes like Achilles, Odysseus, Ajax, and Hector fought in duels that have become legendary. The gods themselves took sides, with Athena and Hera aiding the Greeks, while Apollo and Aphrodite supported the Trojans. The climax came with deception. The Greeks pretended to retreat, leaving behind a massive wooden horse. The Trojans dragged it inside the city walls as a trophy. But at night, Greek soldiers emerged from within, opened the gates, and Troy was destroyed. Homer and the literary epics. Our main sources for the war are Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, written down around the 8th century BCE. But Homer was recounting events that, if they happened at all, occurred hundreds of years earlier, during the Late Bronze Age, around 1200 BCE. The Iliad doesn't cover the entire war. It focuses on a short period near the end, revolving around the wrath of Achilles. The Odyssey tells the aftermath, as Odysseus struggles to return home. Other poems and plays later filled in the missing pieces, from the judgment of Paris to the fall of the city. These works are not history textbooks. They are epic poetry, meant for performance, full of divine intervention, heroic speeches, and symbolic themes. Yet many scholars believe they preserved echoes of real events remembered through generations of oral storytelling. The archaeological Troy. For centuries, Western scholars thought Troy was entirely mythical. That changed in the 19th century, when Heinrich Schliemann excavated a site in northwestern Turkey, near the Dardanelles. There he discovered the ruins of a great city, buried in layers. Modern archaeology has confirmed that this site, known as Hisarlik, was indeed Troy. The city was rebuilt multiple times, but one particular layer, Troy Phia, dating to around 1200 BCE, shows signs of violent destruction, charred remains, collapsed walls, and arrowheads. This coincides with the period of upheaval in the eastern Mediterranean, known as the Bronze Age collapse, when great empires like the Mycenaeans, Hittites, and Egyptians all faced invasions, droughts, and social turmoil. It's possible that Troy was caught up in these struggles, perhaps besieged by Mycenaean Greeks seeking control of trade routes through the Dardanelles. History versus legend. So where does history end and legend begin? Helen of Troy may not have been the literal cause of war. She could represent a symbolic explanation for a deeper conflict over trade, wealth, or political power. The Trojan horse might not have been a wooden statue, but possibly a siege engine, a battering ram, or even a metaphor that later storytellers took literally. The heroes like Achilles and Hector may be composite characters, mythic exaggerations of real warriors, or entirely literary inventions. The 10-year war could reflect a much shorter conflict, stretched into epic proportions by oral tradition. Homer's poems, passed down for centuries before being written, blended memory and myth until the boundary between the two was nearly impossible to separate. The Bronze Age context. What makes the Trojan War so compelling is that it sits right at the edge of myth and history. Around 1200 BCE, the entire eastern Mediterranean was in chaos. The Hittite Empire collapsed, the Mycenaean palaces burned, and mysterious sea peoples raided Egypt. Troy was strategically located near the Dardanelles Strait, controlling access between the Aegean and the Black Sea. Controlling Troy meant controlling vital trade routes for grain, tin, and other resources. A war over such a prize would make perfect sense in historical terms. So even if Paris never stole Helen, and even if Achilles never fought Hector, there may well have been a war, or several wars, for control of this city. The enduring legacy. Why does the Trojan War still matter? Because it's more than a story of battles. It's about pride, betrayal, love, and fate. It gave us timeless warnings that arrogance can destroy empires, that war is both glorious and tragic, and that even great cities can fall to deception. It also reminds us how myth and history intertwine. A real city may have burned, but what survived was the story, the epic of gods and heroes that still inspires art, literature, and film today. From Homer to Hollywood, the Trojan War lives on. Closing. So, was the Trojan War fact or fiction? The answer is both. The myth gave us the unforgettable drama of Helen, Achilles, and the Trojan Horse. The history gave us a real city, real ruins, and a glimpse of a violent world on the edge of collapse. The Trojan War is where legend meets archaeology, a reminder that sometimes the greatest myths are born from the faint echoes of truth